So, anumiyate cha pragutpattehe karyakaranayoho astitvam. And if you follow the logic only says that before the creation there is both the source and the potentiality of creation. Both are there. Karyam bhi hai, karan bhi hai. If there is a creation, definitely, if the creation happens, then the potentiality of that creation was definitely there. This is what we call Satkaryavada, which makes sense. A lot of conflicts get resolved. But when we accept the potentiality of the universe in Brahman, the source, but we don't look upon that potentiality as an attribute of Brahman. We say, just as if the universe is Mayikam, then the potentiality also is Mayikam. Then the conflict is resolved. Then there is no problem. Then you are free. You can have sound sleep. No problem. Therefore, the universe is Mayikam, and before the creation takes place, there is potentiality of the creation. That potentiality also is Mayikam. Then where is the conflict? Supposing you accept the potentiality as an attribute of Brahman, then you have the conflict. I mean, a person like me would have conflict. I don't know about others. I would have definitely conflict. Then I would not be able to accept it. How? If truth has the potentiality of creation as an attribute, then the attribute being ever present with the noun, then that potentiality will always spring up. So I can't do anything. I can't correct the creation. I can't really falsify the creation. Then the division will be a reality. If potentiality of creation were an attribute of Brahman, then that potentiality would be a reality. That potential would be a reality. Then the divisions would be anything that is born of that potential called the division. The whole universe, including my samsara, would be a reality. If it is a reality, then I can't do anything. No shabda, no pramana can help. Therefore, it is very important to know that not only the creation is Mayikam, even the inferred potentiality of it inside Brahman is Mayikam. This whole topic, Bhagavan Bhashyakara, is very nice, he is very brilliant. He calls them as Avyakrita Nama Rupe Adhyaste, he says. Avyakrita Nama Rupe, the unmanifest names and forms which are themselves errors, he says. Adhyaste. It's enough, ji. Because if the names and forms are real, if it is like saying, you see, he gives an example. You know, a banyan seed. If the tree that manifests is banyan, then the tree that is there unmanifest in the seed is also banyan tree. Is banyan. If the tree that manifests is banyan, then the tree that exists in the unmanifest form in the seed of a banyan is also banyan. Is the example he gives. Similarly, if the universe is Mayikam, its potentiality also is Mayikam. Where is the conflict? But it is important to accept that before the creation has the potentiality in the source. That means before the creation there is the source, but also the potential for the universe. Yes. This very statement is a part of teaching from the creation point of view. It is not a statement of ultimate truth. It is a part of Prakriya ji. And a part of Prakriya should not be looked upon as a reality. A part of Prakriya is meant to convey the reality. Understand? A path is not, the route is not the goal. The path is not the goal. The path leads to the goal. Similarly, the Prakriya itself is not the truth. Prakriya is meant to convey the truth. Where is the conflict? Is it not possible for a Vedanta Vidyarthi to have a sound sleep? Excellent, he can have sound sleep, sound day. Anand say, he can just, even under a tree, he can live the. It is not the abundance that makes one happy, I am telling you. It is the conflict-free perception of the truth. It is the conflict-free explanation of the whole existence. It is a conflict-free explanation of the whole existence. The conflict-free explanation of both life and death. It is a conflict-free explanation of the struggle, etc. That conflict-free, because explanations do cause conflicts, means problems, controversies. Controversy means it pains me, so it's a conflict. A conflict. And therefore, if a person has clear explanation of everything about life and death, then with that clarity in your mind, you live do roti mili jata hai. Do roti is not a deal. I don't think survival is the issue in God's creation. We make survival an issue, but survival is not the issue. It is the perception of the truth that is the issue. We convert a non-issue, the survival, into an issue. Our greed makes survival an issue. Our adharma makes survival an issue. Our inertia makes survival an issue. I want easy access to food and drink. No, I should work hard. That's not it. If I work, I will always get something. Survival is not the issue. I don't think so. And I can explain why survival is not the issue, I can tell you. In view of the fact that there is life after life, even if life goes halfway, kya farak padta hai, dusra life to aayenge. And who has the problem? That must be clear. It is not you and me that has the problem. It is the truth that has the problem of looking like you and me. You and me doesn't have the problem. The truth looking like you and me is the problem, has the problem. And thus, now I have conveyed this. Before creation, the cause, there was both Karanam as well as Karyam. Karyasya hi sataha jayamanasya karane sati utpatti darshana. Up to that it means. What is potentially there alone is seen to become manifest. What is potentially not there can never be made manifest. Karyasya hi sataha jayamanasya. Karyasya satahi jayamanasya karane sati utpatti darshanat. The karyam that is seen to be present in karanam is said to become manifest. What is potentially present in the karanam? That means what? Creation presupposes both the source as well as the very creation in the unmanifest state. That means creation presupposes two things. One is the source, the other is the unmanifest, the potentiality for the creation. Like before the wave is born, there is water with the potential to look like a wave. That potentiality to look like a wave, the water enjoys the inner potentiality to look like a wave. That potentiality is called avyakritam, the unmanifest. If the wave is mithya, then that potentiality also is mithya. That is not a big deal. Karane sati utpatti darshanat. Asati cha darshanat. Where there is neither the source, where there is no source with the potential for creation, there is no creation. Adarshanath, there is no creation. See. Jagatopi, even for this universe, this is what we observe in various instances. It is only when there is clay which can be molded into a pot, only when there is a clay which has the potentiality to look like a pot, to be made into a pot, only then the pot is born, pot is made. So these are various instances we see. And the creation, the universe also, it is the same. That is how you have to understand. If you are using tarka, here I will just let me draw your attention to one thing. If you use tarka, then understand that Jagat also involves a source and the potentiality for the creation through the help of the examples. Tarka means you have to take the help of examples called drishtanta. Pot presupposes the clay with the potential. A wave presupposes the water with the potential for a wave. And similarly, this universe also must presuppose the source with the potential for the universe. This is what is called trying to explain away the universe through tarka. And tarka means you bring in drishtanta. You have to hear this. Tarka means you bring in drishtantas. Important. You can't use logic without bringing in drishtanta. There cannot be logic without drishtanta, without nidarshana. Very important thing. Yatra yatra dhumaha, tatra tatra vanhihi is a vyapti, all right. And drishtanta is like your own kitchen. I see in my kitchen, whenever there is smoke, I also see fire. That is a drishtanta. So every day I see smoke in my kitchen and I also see fire. Today I am seeing smoke in the mountain. Definitely there should be. This is called tarka. You always convey something, figure out something, infer something through logic, through tarka. Tarka means that is very beautiful if you can follow it. Those who can follow. Those who are not ready, unready to understand, just leave it. Tarka is nothing but vyapti, the universal phenomenon. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Is called a universal. This is called vyapti, the pervasive principle. That pervasive principle is called vyapti, that is tarka. By means of that pervasive principle called vyapti, you infer things. Yatra yatra dhumaha, wherever there is fire, wherever there is smoke, real smoke, not dust smoke, not a dust cloud. That must be, when data must be perfect. Not a dust cloud, but where there is a real smoke, there has to be fire. Where there is smoke, this is called a universal principle. This universal principle has no exceptions. You can't arrive at, you can't do anumana. If the universal principle has certain exceptions, then those exceptions must be cited. Bada problem ho jati. But wherever there is smoke, there is fire, is a universal. And what is the word for it in Sanskrit? Vyapti. And that is all that is. That is what helps you do tarka. And here in creation, wherever there is creation, there is a source. Before every creation presupposes the source. What is it? Vyapti. Wherever there is a creation, there is a source. Every creation presupposes a source. That is what is called Vyapti. Listen to it. Wherever there is creation, every creation presupposes the source with the potential for the creation. You can't really use gold to make a wave because the gold doesn't have the potential for the wave. You can't use water to create an ornament because it doesn't have the potential for an ornament. Therefore, every creation presupposes two things. Number one, the source. Number two, the potentiality for the creation. If the creation is mayikam, then the potentiality is ये तो बहुत बड़ी बात है, most enlightening. In the very beginning, I had this problem. What is this? If creation is mayikam, and if God has the potentiality for creation, then it's a part of Him. If God has an attribute of the potentiality for creation, then who can stop the creation? Because what is potential has to manifest. Who can go against it? It is only when you go through the bhashyam, you say, oh my God, Ashikara says, avyakrite nama rupe, avidya kalpite adhyaste. The name and form which are unmanifest, which are themselves adhyasta, adhyastayara. Then there is no problem. And after that we had pakodis. Out of sheer joy. Then there is no problem. This is called Vyapti. Wherever there is creation, it presupposes the source with the potential for the creation. What is this called? Vyapti. Then you give an example that is called Drishtanta, like in the case of a pot. If the pot has to be created, then it presupposes the clay with the potentiality for the pot. And considering this universe also as a creation, then by tarka we say, well son, if tarka can establish the source for the pot, tarka can establish for the sake of the Nayayika Vaisashika that there has to be the source. But what would be that source? That is Shabda Praman. That it has a source is arrived at through tarka. You see, tarka can only establish this much, this creation must have a source with the potentiality. But what is that source? That is a matter for Shabda Pramanam. Are you able to follow this point? That is why in the second sutra, Bhagavan says, Kimidam Brahmana Sambaddham, Kim Anyena Kenachidva Sambaddham, Iti Nishchetum Na Shakyam. He says, even though you can, through logic, even though you can arrive at the fact that this universe has a source, but you can never know that that source is Brahman through Tarka. Tarka can help you that this universe is not hanging in emptiness. Tarka can tell you that this universe is rooted in some source, which is a big relief, really. If this universe is rooted in some source, then definitely that source is greater than creation. The source is more free. The source is independent of the creation, whereas the creation is not independent of the source. What else is freedom? To be independent of the creation. The source of time is independent of time. The source of space is independent of space. The source of thought is independent of thought. Please understand, the glory of the source is only this much. The glory of the source lies in the fact that its existence is independent of the creation. What else can be the glory? Tell me. What else is the glory of water? That it can exist without being a wave. What else is the glory? Where else does God's glory lie? God's existence is independent of the universe. Whereas universe can't exist independent of Bhagavan. Understand what is glory. Glory is not chamak damak. When can really man grow out of this definition of glory as chamak damak, kap kapo? Is it easy for man to understand the meaning of the word glory except in terms of chamak damak? Chamak damak ji, that's called the bada chamak. हम गए थे, उधर गए थे, क्या रौनक था. Ronak is nothing but slowly a spoiled word of Rukma. You know Rukma? Self-effulgent. Therefore, glory is nothing but this. The source is glorious because it is independent of creation. Thus, this is the Vyapti. Now let us go back. So this universe also, sir, hey Tarkika, hey Sunyavadi, if you believe in Tarka, I can say that even Tarka only points to the fact that this universe, before it was created, there was the source and also the potentiality for the creation, as in the case of the pot, therefore it is not Shunyam. Shunyavadi is told, and therefore before the creation of the universe, don't say there was Shunyam, because before the creation should presuppose not the Shunyam, creation presupposes the source of the potential. Yes. Now when we use Tarka to convince the Tarkika, we use Tarka to convince Tarkika. Some jokers imagine that when Tarka itself can do such a big job of convincing Tarkika, etc., why do we require Shabda Pramanam? Tarka itself can convey the whole truth. No. Tarka can really help you to an extent. Up to a point it can help you, and beyond that, Tarka cannot help. This is what I wanted to convey. When the Shabda Pramana comes, Shabda Pramana creates Karyakarana Bhava between Sushupti and Jagrat. I want you to hear that. Tarka presumes Tarka presumes the universe as the creation and some source as the source. But that source is always, Tarka always makes you think of the source as something other than you. Tarka does establish that this universe has a source, but Tarka cannot establish that that source is only you. But when it comes to Shabda Pramanam, it creates the Samanya Vishesha Bhava, it creates the Karyakarana Bhava, it creates really the Sakshi Sakshya Bhava, it creates all Prakriyas within three avasthas. Sushupti as the Karanam, Jagrat as the Karyam. Sushupti as Advitiya, Atma as the Karanam, and Swapna as the Karyam. Within these three states there is Karyakarana Bhava, there is also Samanya Vishesha Bhava, there is also Avasthatraya Bhava, Vishaya Vishayi Bhava, Sakshi Sakshya Bhava, and the Prakriyas, and also within the three states will do Advitiyatva. Can Tarka talk about it? Why? Because Sushupti is not Indriya Vishaya, and Tarka functions on Indriya Vishaya. I want you to follow this. It's great if you can follow. Tarka can talk about the source of the universe and makes you think of it as something else. Paroksha. Thus, ये सब बात करते तो हमको तो आनंद आता है. And therefore he says, Jagatopi, even for the Jagat, Prag Utpattehe, before the creation, Karana Astitvam Anumiyate. Even the universe, the creation of the universe, one can infer that before the creation of the universe, there must be the source. Karanatvam, Karana Astitvam Anumiyate. Ghatadi Karana Astitvavat. Just as logic can help us infer the presence of clay before the pot, logic can also help us infer the presence of some source before the creation. Some source. What is that source? That's a different matter. Then ultimately we say Tarka is not the Pramana. In fact, there is a flaw. There is a flaw even in the Tarka. When you use Tarka even to arrive at the Karanam, there is a flaw. I know that pot is a created thing, but we don't know whether this universe is a creation. I only see it is there. I don't even know. It is only when it is established that it is a creation, logic can help me to infer that if it is a creation, then it must have a source. But who can really say that it is a creation? If you say, Swamiji, in the Sushupti it begins and ends, I say that is not the way the layman thinks. Vedanta says Jagrat begins and ends, whereas the universal thinking is Jagrat continues, I begin and end. I come and go. The waking state continues, I come and go. मैं आता हूँ जाता हूँ. Vedanta comes and says the waking begins and ends in your sight. That is all a part of teaching. But before the teaching begins, how does man think? The waking continues, I come and go. Life continues, the universe continues, I come and go. When he thinks that I come and go, then that means he can't even conclude that this universe is a creation. When he can't even arrive at the fact that the universe is a creation, how can he infer the source? That means Tarka. Even when we use Tarka to arrive at, even when we use the Tarka to infer that the universe must presuppose a source, there is a flaw in it. But we ignore all those flaws and try to convince the Tarkika, chalo bhaiya, If you think, if pot can have a source, this universe also can have. So it's a working. It's a flawed, but then it's not a serious flaw. And nor the Purvapakshis are so bright enough to see all these flaws. Anyway, sometimes you take advantage of their stupidities. Then, now the Purvapakshi says, see, Ghatadi karanasyapi asattvamevam. He says, sir, it's a very, very beautiful. Sir, you say when pot is born, it involves a source. All right. The Purvapakshi thinks. It's a different thought. Say, pot when it is created, it presupposes the source. All right. Maybe it presupposes the source, but when pot is born, it destroys that source. How? It says. This is... You have to hear patiently. You know, a pot maker, just let us go to a pot maker, mentally. And there is a pot wheel, there is a wheel. A wheel by which the pot maker makes the pot. And before he puts the clay on the wheel, he makes clay balls. These clay balls are called mritpinda. The basic mitti is called mrit. The basic mitti is called mrit or clay. But in order to make a pot, you can't put clay like that. You have to make a ball. You have to make a ball out of the clay. This ball, you knead the clay well, as you knead atta for roti. Then you convert it into balls and you put that on the wheel, and the rest of it you can imagine. That means the immediate, according to the Sunyavadi, the immediate source of the pot is not clay, but clay? Mritpinda. Clay ball. The immediate material from which the pot springs, the source out of which, the thing out of which you make the pot, is not clay, but clay ball. But a pot can never be made without destroying that clay ball. That ballness of the clay ball has to disappear. That particular form of the ball has to disappear and take form of a pot. So the Shunyavada thinks the pot may presuppose a source called clay ball, but without destroying that ball, pot is never born. In that manner, you see that gap in communication. Siddhanti says clay is the source, whereas the Shunyavadi is twisting the argument by saying clay ball is the source. If clay ball is the source of the pot, then when the pot is born, the clay ball is destroyed. So Jagat Karanam also. We say the source of the universe is like clay. He says the source of the universe is like clay ball. When the universe is born, it has to destroy the source. Just as the pot, when it is born, it destroys the clay ball. It gets disrupted, the clay ball gets disrupted in the process of the pot taking a shape. Similarly, when the universe takes shape, it disrupts the shape of the source. Therefore, even if we accept that there was the source before the creation, but we can say now there is no source, because when the creation takes place, the source comes to an end. Why? Because The source of the universe is not like clay. The source of the universe is like clay ball. Bom, bom. Are you able to follow? Now I am asking a question. Is it not a mischief? What is it? Is it mediocrity or mischief? Is it a mediocrity or mischief? I think it is both. If he is mischievous, I still feel he is brilliant. But if he is not mischievous, then he is really stupid. Yes, he is really stupid. Because the fundamental source can never be considered clay ball. The fundamental source has to be considered as clay. Common sense. Simple common sense. But please understand this point very well. Whether it is Nayayika school or Vaiseshika school or Shunyavadis or the Sankhyas, all of them look at Mrit Pinda as Gatakaranam, not Mrit. Why? Because Vedanta takes the stand Mrit as the Karanam. In order to refute Vedanta, they say Mrit Pinda. What is all this? These are all what you got, hair splitting arguments. कहा जब घर छोड़ देते हैं कुछ काम तो होता नहीं है ना? जब घर छोड़ देते हैं किसी का काम तो होता नहीं है. Then you go into splitting hairs. Splitting hairs. But it's all to be enjoyed. How human beings, sometimes they don't debate and discuss. They somehow or other put the other person down. Every scholar is inventive of the ways to refute the other person. He is not ready to see the other person's point of view. Every scholar is inventive of means and ways to refute the other person, put the other person down. Not ready to see the other person's point of view. See the point of view of the scripture. Therefore, a lot of debates that have taken place in this world, independent of the Shastra, are all based on Raga Dvesha. Yes. When you understand this point, then you have no interest in debates and discussions, etc. Most of the debates and discussions end up being only Raga Dvesha based. When the Siddhanti is saying clay is the source of the pot, he immediately says not clay. The pot, when it is born, it can't destroy the clay, but it destroys the clay ball. Therefore, let us accept the clay ball as the Karanam. Similarly, this universe, when it is born, whatever was its immediate source, which is like clay ball, must have been destroyed. So now, once upon a time there was God. Before creation, once upon a time there was God. And now after the creation there is no God, because the creation replaced God. हाँ जी, एक जमाने में भगवान था, आजकल नहीं है. Why? सृष्टि के पहले भगवान था, सृष्टि के बाद केवल सृष्टि है, भगवान नहीं है. सृष्टि has replaced भगवान. इस प्रकार, what are these arguments? For a modern educated person, what are all these things? You bulldoze them. Yes. Therefore, but anyway, but they have to be seen. Bulldozing means you have to see their falsity, that's all. Not bypassing them. Gatadikaranasya api asatvameva anupamridya, without destroying mritpindadikam, without destroying the clay ball, ghatadi anutpatteriti chet, ghata itself cannot be born. A pot cannot be created without destroying the clay ball. So Shunyavadi says, sir, without destroying the clay ball, you can't really create a pot. That means once the pot is created, the clay ball is destroyed. Similarly, its source is destroyed. Similarly, when the universe was created, its source was destroyed. Why can't we think like that? That tab bhi shunya hi ho jata hai. See? Now, let us split some hairs. कोई बात नहीं. क्लास में थोड़ा बहुत होता है. Because analysis में सब होता है. According to Shunyavadi, he thinks Shunyavada can be established by two ways. By not accepting the source before creation. That means the creation has taken place in emptiness. This is one way. The second way is, if the Vedantis do accept the source, if the Tarka tries to enforce upon us, if the Tarka enforces upon us the presence of the source before creation, then the Shunyavadi thinks, I can still establish Shunyavada because the universe, when it is created, it replaces the source, destroys the source. Iti second he adopts. Now Siddhanti says, shut up. When Siddhanti says na, it means shut up. When the Purvapakshi says na, it means it's not so. Because Purvapakshi can't say shut up. Siddhanti can say shut up because he has the support of the truth. Yes. Na, shut up. Why? Mridadehe karanatvat. The Siddhanti says, my dear son, don't say Mrit Pinda is the Karanam, Mrit is the Karanam. Mridadehe Karanatvat. Clay is the source, not clay ball. Like, if a shirt is made, don't say it is made of cloth, fundamentally. It is made of cotton. It's made of cotton. The fundamental material alone is the material. What cannot be further reduced is the fundamental material. Yes. Mrit Suvarnadihi. Next line. Mrit Suvarnadihi. Clay is the material for the pots. Suvarna, gold is the material for the ornaments. Please don't say gold plate is the material for ornament. Gold plate, nahi, gold dravyam. Gold is the material for ornament. Clay is the material. Because before you make the gold, an ornament, you make some golden, what we call, golden thread. You make a golden thread. Now you can't say the material for the ornament is golden thread. The material for an ornament is gold, the dravya, which cannot be inside creation. You can't reduce clay to further something further. Inside creation, you can't reduce it to space, etc., etc. It is clay. That's Mrit Suvarnadihi Tatra Karanam. The source is only the gold and the clay. Ghata ruchikadehe, for the pot and the ornament. Ghata means pot, ruchika means an ornament. Na pindakara visesha, it is not the ballness of the clay. That ballness of the clay is not the source. Clayness of the clay is the source, not the ballness, clay ball. क्या जी, इसको भी बताना पड़ता है. Yes. Na pindakara visesha. Why? Tad abhave bhavat. Very beautiful. Mrit can exist without being a pindakara. Mrit can exist without being a ball. If Mrit can exist when the ball is, when the Mrit can exist without there being a ball. Pindakara visesha, say, therefore, ghata ruchikade, na pindakara visesha, tad abhave bhavat. Even when there is no pindakara, clay is. And therefore, between the two, what is fundamental? Clay. Why? Because when pinda is, clay is. When pinda is not, clay is. What is without the other is more fundamental than the other. That is why Bhagavan is most fundamental, because Bhagavan has Anvaya and everything else has Vyatireka. When Deha is, when mind is, Atma is. When mind is not, Atma is. Therefore, which is more fundamental? Atma. That's how it should be understood as fundamental. Between Pinda and Mrit, Mrit is more fundamental, because without there being Pinda also, Mrit remains. Pinda is not fundamental. Why? Because if Mrit is not there, Pinda is not there. Thus, what is most fundamental within God's creation, within the five elements? Well, that dravyam, that material is what we call the clay. That is the material for the pot, not clay ball. Clay is the material. Okay. Even if clay is the material for the pot, maybe when the pot is created, the pot will replace the clay. No, a creation never replaces the material. Creation takes place in the material. Most comforting thought. The universe appears within the heart and soul of the truth. The universe is not appearing on the margins of the truth, please, because truth doesn't have any margin. Which is the marginal part of the seer? The downtown of the seer and the suburb of the seer. Are there suburbs of the seer? The downtown of the seer? Is there central and marginal difference? All inequalities come to an end. Therefore, the universe exists in the very being of the truth. It doesn't replace the being, it appears in the being. And therefore, Vedanta is talking about that being. If a jiva has time to think about it, he is called a sage. He is called a sage. And without being a sage, you can't sit down and go into this topic. Impossible. You will always look for something nice to eat, something nice to drink, something nice to watch. Kuch entertainment, kuch मनोरंजन, something nice. खाने पीने में मन हो जाता है. कहाँ है? बैठ के. And therefore, tadabhave bhavat. Next sentence, ji. Asati api pindakara viseshe, even when there is no pindakara. Asati api pindakara viseshe. Mrit suvarnadi karana dravya matra deva. From the pure material called clay and gold. Ghata ruchakadi karya utpattihi drishyate. Creation of the pot is seen straight from the clay without clay ball. You can convert clay into a pot. You can convert gold straight away into an ornament without even a golden thread or a clay ball. There can be machines. What is there? Nothing great. Even if the convention is, dekho ji, there has been a convention that before you make a pot, you convert the clay into clay ball is a convention. Before you make an ornament, you convert gold into a golden thread. Just a convention. Does it really disprove the fact that the fundamental material is only clay and gold? Yeah. Can conventions change the truth? What are these conventions? They can always change. Tomorrow a machine may come, you just put the clay and then a pot comes out. Why not? These conventions are what? Are they greater than the truth? That's why conventions can't make you happy, truth makes you happy. That is the pakka. Ruchakadi karya utpattir drishyate tasmat, therefore na pindakar visheshaha ghata ruchakadi karanam, therefore the ballness of the clay or the threadness of the gold is not the karanam, the source for the pot and ornament. Tasmat na pindakara visheshaha ghata ruchikadi karanam. Asati tu mrit suvarnadi dravya. That dravya is very important, the material. The physical matter is called dravya. The basic material is called dravya. Like wood is dravya. Wood is dravya. Gold is dravya. Clay is dravya. Water is dravya. That dravya goes into the creation of the form. Why do you say that dravya is the material? Because without that there is no creation. Without pinda you can make a pot, but without clay you can't make a pot. Without which you can't make a pot. That should be the material. That should be the material. Asatitu mrit suvarnadi dravye ghata ruchikadihi na jayate iti, therefore mrit suvarnadi dravyameva. The material called the mrit, the material called suvarna is the karanam, is the fundamental source. Natu pindakara visheshaha, but not the ballness of the clay. Now in this paragraph we have got very beautiful thing. Shunyavadi, in order to establish Shunyavada, I am going to tell it in a profounder way. A Shunyavadi cannot establish Shunyavada without establishing that creation can happen without a source. And in order to establish that some creation can happen without a source, he must adopt the tarka. And tarka means, tarka doesn't help you. Tarka never helps a person who wants to establish creation without a source. Because tarka always, tarka says, tarka sees that there has to be a source. Therefore, through tarka, a Shunyavadi cannot use tarka and establish Shunyavada Why? Because if you follow Tarka properly, it always tells you that every creation must presuppose a source. Number one. Thus a Shunyavadi can't establish the Shunyavada by telling that the creation can take place without a source. Number one. Number two, Shunyavadi can't establish the Shunyavada by establishing that the creation replaces the source. That is also not possible. Creation takes place in the source but not replace the source. If the Shunyavadi has to, now listen, now we will add. If the Shunyavadi has to establish the Shunyavada, if he has to establish that the creation does replace the source, then he has to change the example and follow the Parinamavada, like the dahi, like the curd replaces milk, transmutation. And if he accepts any transmutation, if he accepts law of causation, then also he can't establish Shunyavada. No. He has problems. Because if he says the source of the universe has undergone change to become the world, even if it has undergone change to become the world, it continues to be a reality. How can it be non-existent? Yes, the milk has transformed and become curd, but the curd is a reality. It is not aupacharikam. It is not some name and form, it is its substance. I can say wave is only a name and form, water is the substance. But if the milk has become the curd, then the whole curd is substance. The milk has undergone change. If you say some source has undergone change and therefore the universe has destroyed its source, koi baat nahi ji. If that source has undergone change to become the world, even then the world becomes a reality, it can't be shunya. It is not possible to establish a school that is contrary to the truth. Truth will not allow you. Truth will not allow you to establish any theory that is contrary to the truth. You may struggle, you may speculate, but mind is not more powerful than the truth. Logic is not more powerful than the truth. You can never achieve anything that is contrary to the truth. Not possible. You may believe a wrong conclusion, but you can't establish it to be true. There is a difference between living with a wrong belief. There is a difference between living with a wrong belief and establishing it to be right. The wrong can never be established as a right, but you may live with it with the belief that it is right. That is okay. Who is interested in that? Shunyavadi may live with the belief that everything is shunyam, but he can't establish, he can't prove it. He can't prove it. A student of Vedanta is not interested who lives with what belief. A student of Vedanta is interested in what can be established and what cannot be established. What can be proved and what cannot be proved. That is what matters. But it can never be proved that the Shunya, he is the source of the universe. The Shunya, he is the substance of the universe. Or the Shunya, he is the destiny of the universe. You cannot prove it. In whatever way, even the most accomplished ways of your mischief cannot establish Shunyavada. Even the most dexterous mischiefs can't establish. Why? Because nothing can be accomplished which is contrary to the truth. Yes, pakka hai. Contrary to the truth. Becoming happy with a wrong belief also is contrary to the truth. You can never become happy. You can only have an illusion of happiness for a while, but ultimately the blood will be cold. Thus, here Bhagavan says, my dear sir, Mrit is the Karanam, Natu Mrit Pinda. Therefore, pot may replace Mrit Pinda, pot may destroy Mrit Pinda, pot cannot replace or destroy Mrit. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. ये है जी बृहदारण्यक भाष्य। इसके अंदर क्या क्या है रामा, बृहदारण्यक भाष्य में क्या क्या है। हरिओम जी नमस्कार। एक दो पेज पढ़ने के लिए